All right, we have some wild breaking news coming from the President of the United States, who just backed down on all of his National Guard deployment that was surgically targeted towards blue cities and blue cities only across the country. Now, let me reiterate throughout this video. Do not fall for the distractions. I'm not saying that in a conspiratorial sense, but Donald Trump loves to control headlines and control the narrative based on key distractions at key moments. Both the deployment and the removal of the National Guard to multiple blue cities happened at key moments. Right as the Epstein file stuff was flaring back up earlier in the year, Donald Trump began to mobilize the National Guard. Not to fight crime, not to lower crime, not to disincentivize crime, and we now know that because there was no long-term solution this entire time. After months and months of deploying the National Guard, pulling people away from their families and placing them in other states oftentimes for no reason, after two National Guard members who were shot tragically in DC, when they don't even live in DC, they were just young 20, 21-year-olds who were, signing up thinking that they were going to help their home state, but Trump then deployed them for political games to other areas, and they died. All of this happened for nothing, because a few months later, Donald Trump has unanimously just removed the National Guard from Chicago, Los Angeles, and Portland, therefore conceding this was not a long-term solution to crime. This was not going to fix anything this entire time. It was a waste of resources, a waste of taxpayer dollars. And listen, there are ways that you can mobilize agents, federal agents, for example, to stop the flow of guns going across states. Like, I live in Chicago. One of the biggest problems in Chicago are illegal guns that come from the border, over the border from Indiana, my home state. It's funny, my home state is trafficking to my current state, but there are ways you can stop this trafficking by allocating federal funds and federal agents towards the border. But that's not what Trump's doing. He mobilized the National Guard, young troops, to try to, disincentivize crime for 2 or 3 months during the winter. Now he is announcing, quote, "We are removing the National Guard from Chicago, Los Angeles, and Portland, despite the fact that crime has been greatly reduced by having these great patriots in those cities, and only by that fact." Okay, this is just such a dumb talking point. Of course, if you mobilize troops to any given area, everything is going to drop. Consumer spending in DC dropped by 30% when the National Guard was mobilized because people weren't going out to restaurants. People weren't going out and shopping. You know what a great way to have zero crime is? Always just flood the streets with maximum military and scare everybody. But there is a trade-off between safety and between policy in this country. There is a trade-off between safety and between freedom in this country, and we oftentimes veer on the side of freedom because this is America. But Donald Trump then says, Portland, Los Angeles, and Chicago were gone if it weren't for the federal government stepping in. You think Chicago was going to be gone if you didn't mobilize a few hundred National Guard troops for like 2 months? This is such a troll. He says, "It is hard to believe that these Democrat mayors and governors, all of whom are greatly incompetent, would want us to leave." Now, the real reason why he is removing all of the National Guard is because he is losing court case after court case. Donald Trump just got slapped by a court case in the state of Illinois last week after the National Guard was forced to retreat, and multiple other lawsuits were looming over the Trump administration. But the timing is also not a coincidence. He didn't just do this because of the lawsuits. He decided to remove them all at once to try to control the narrative at a time when he is losing it. Every single act of authoritarianism from this administration, whether it's the deployment of the National Guard or the president removing the National Guard like he's a dictator, it is all an act of desperation to consolidate power heading into the midterms. This administration knows they lied and betrayed the American people on every single front, so they are trying to distract you, and now the onus is on us to not get distracted. I have a quick list right here. The Trump admin wants to distract you from the Epstein files. The huge overarching lack of transparency comes from the Epstein files, but there is also a massive lack of economic transparency. They have been hiding economic data for months and months and months, whether it's the GDP updates, the inflation updates, the unemployment updates, updates, the real wage growth updates, they have been hiding economic data. So we have no transparency on the Epstein files, no transparency on economic data, no transparency on Trump's health. I mean, the only transparency that we get is taken from long telephoto cameras where both of his hands are just brutally swollen. As Skyley points out, Trump's right hand looks like it's going to explode. He's so swollen. Hence, switching whatever he's having done to his left hand. And you can see right here, both of his hands are just eroded, corroded. Trump's black hand was painted up when he met with Zelensky the other day, and it still looks quite swollen. The major lack of transparency coming from this administration doesn't just go to the Epstein files, economy, and his health. What about the foreign strikes? Repeated foreign strikes on Venezuela, on, ships in the Caribbean, and even now the land of Venezuela. We have apparently, reportedly, struck the land of Venezuela, and we don't even quite know why. It's for regime change, it's for oil, it's for all of the old neocon reasons, but we deserve an explanation before we go to war. There's even a lack of transparency in the foreign aid that we're giving out. I think we should continue to fund Ukraine nonstop, but we are still shoveling money into Israel when they are not the good guy in this situation anymore. Repeated distractions, repeated economic and military failures from this administration, and what do we get for it? We get random announcements on December 31st, on New Year's Eve, of the president desperately trying to regain narrative control by talking about crime, when the reality is the National Guard being deployed to Chicago, Los Angeles, and Portland is not a long-term solution. It's not a real solution. It's an authoritarian solution, and perhaps the most expensive solution possible. Your taxpayer dollars are being wasted by these stunts. I mean, check this out. 50 agents were used at Ridgedale Library today to arrest one person. I want to show you this video. It's actually kind of hilarious. Senator Chris Murphy points out, you work so hard for your money, and they are just lighting your taxpayer dollars on fire. Check this out. 50 federal agents masked up in full gear walking down the steps for this tiny dude in the white t-shirt. Not to be mean, but I mean, it's just a tiny guy surrounded by 50 other dudes. Look at how many agents were needed. They are wasting our taxpayer dollars on these performative stunts. Look at this. What are these agents doing in the back? Come on. They just hear there's going to be free lunch or something. Our taxpayer dollars are being wasted on this. Our taxpayer dollars are being wasted on deployments of the National Guard that nobody asked for. I'm going to leave it there. If you appreciate my yaps, my rants, then make sure you drop a like. Double check to make sure you're subscribed to the Adam Mockler feed. And Happy New Year's Eve. I hope everybody gets some good time with their family. We are about to head into 2026. And not slow down. More debates, more breaking news, more pushback, and more truth out into the internet. So make sure you're following me everywhere, whether it's Instagram, YouTube. Make sure you're following me over on Substack, on Facebook. Wherever you are, we are. So I love you all, and peace out.